Hey, right, so we're going to make a video today on what are apps. So you probably heard loads of terms for pretty much the same thing, like programs, web apps, software application, websites, platforms, executable files, and you're like, what does it all mean? So today we're going to try and tease out the nuance from the rhetoric. We're going to try and find out what the definition of software is. So software is effectively sets of instructions that are given to computers which are written in programming languages. Those programming languages have been compiled into a format that the processor can understand in like as a set of binary commands, and they're known as an executable file. Software effectively all carries out a task that's useful for the user. It runs on hardware, but first needs to be installed onto the hard drive of the computer before it can run. If you want to find where all your software is, there's probably a file or a folder for it. On a Windows PC, that is C drive program files, and I'll show you that later. So just to review what I just said, when we're making software, a programmer, that's this person here, types in some code, typing code, and they produce this code. What that file is called source code. There's many different languages it can be written in, like Java or C++, and then they've got this source code file, but the computer can't understand it, so what they do is they run it through another program called a compiler that translates it from this high-level source code that's like if this then this into machine code, which is like 00100110001, and that machine code file is called an executable file, or a program as you'd know it, and when you double click on that program, it moves it from the hard drive all the way across to the RAM, and then the processor just starts taking out one instruction at a time out of it, executing that instruction, execute that instruction. Cool. So I said, like, where inside from the view of the operating system are your program files kept? Well, weirdly enough, on this Windows 10 you can see that there's a folder called program files, and inside there you could go to another folder named, for example, Chrome, the web browser, the way that you look at the World Wide Web. And inside of there, somewhere in there, there's chrome.exe, and that .exe means it is executable. It can be run. It's an executable program, and when you double click on that, will move it from the C drive or the hard drive into the RAM, and the processor will start working on it, and you will see it pop up on your screen as if by magic. So, but where physically, if you think about, we've looked at it from the operator's point of view, but that's only a virtual machine. It's kind of it's an abstraction. You don't actually, that's not real, the operating system. It says, well, I want to know where it is, where can I put my finger on it, where can it be touched? So when the computer's turned off and we're not running the program, it's stored on the hard drive. There's this tiny little metal silver box at the bottom here, a few terabytes of data on there, and that's the hard drive. It stores all the programs. It also stores all the files that you're working on as well. Sometimes called the C drive, or on a computer you'll see it represented as C:/ /. Just check which way the / goes. I think I made an error there. We can't even see it on this side. Okay. But then when you double click on the file, so you go in and you go, I want to open up Word, click. What happens? Well, effectively it moves it from the hard drive into the RAM, and this is where the RAM is. It's there. We know it's RAM because it says RAM next to it, and there's these couple of microchips, and they're storing the programs while they're being executed by the processor. So what is a program? Well, a program is a piece of software. So software is kind of like the plural of programs. And application is a program that does a specific task for a user and is not involved in the running of the computer. We have a special word for that. We call those system software. So applications does something useful. For example, Word is an application. Something useful for me is to write a report or to write a letter. And I do that on Word. Equally, sharing pictures of cats with my friends might be something useful that I do on an application called Facebook, or an app called Facebook. So I said here that Windows is not really an app, because that's the operating system. It runs all the stuff, whereas the individual things that are installed onto Windows would be called apps. Bonanza. Right, okay, so as well as PCs, laptops and phones also have software on them. in that instance, we don't call them an application. As in a PC, it's generally we install a program, or we say it's an application. When it's on a phone, I think probably because it's smaller, we call it an app. And there's a few little niche things about apps. Generally, an app is on a mobile device, like a phone or a tablet. They're a little bit smaller in memory size. Most importantly, though, they're often downloaded from like some kind of online store. So you've got like the Google Play Store or the App Store, and they all live there. And that actually gives the company who runs the App Store, a big income stream. Like, they make lots of money from that because they take a little slice of all the profits, but also a lot of control about what actually ends up on their devices. In the good old days of computers, we used to just buy it from a store, and there was very less control from the organisation, from the people who ran the operating systems and sold you the hardware, of what actually you were going to do with it. And so that's kind of, I think that in itself is quite an interesting dynamic. And so, as I said, apps, tiny little bits of software, they generally go on mobile devices, and often you get them off an app store. Right, so more confusion. So I've got this idea that before that software was something that was installed onto a physical device, but then there's stuff like Facebook that just kind of, it seems like it's ubiquitous, like it's everywhere. And what are we meant to do about that? Well, I want you to just have a think. You can pause it and think all the different ways that you can access Facebook. I'm expecting you to, it's probably here, isn't it? Just pause here. Maybe it's over here. Hit the pause button. Good, you're back. So, I'll go through these. I think I can access Facebook as an app on my phone, via my web browser on anything. So on my tablet, I can look at it. I can look at it on my through the web browser on my work computer, on my home computer. And also, weirdly, which I never knew, you can get a desktop app for it. So you go on the Windows Store and actually get a program that will run Facebook. The thing is that Facebook in its entirety doesn't exist on any one of these devices. It's kind of shared. And Facebook is a very specific type of application called a web application. So basically, the way that it works is we create a website called Facebook, and they set up a thing called an API, or Applications Programming Interface, and that lets other programs access data that's inside of Facebook. So the principle, the Facebook as like a program is stored on the Facebook servers, and so the server is like a really powerful computer that probably lives in San Francisco for Facebook, and it basically can dish out data as you ask for it. And then, in addition to that, there's a set of programs that are stored, that are then installed on individual devices, and they're known as native apps. So they're installed. So, for example, you've got a Facebook app for your phone, you've got a Facebook app for your PC, and one for your smartphone, or you can access it via the World Wide Web. And so this setup of a program, which is kind of like spread out between some of the processing is done on your home computer and some of the processing is done over in San Francisco, that is called a web application. So you need to think of programs not just as these things that are installed on your home PC, or think of them, they're in the cloud, but kind of think of them as kind of like this weird ecosystem of like the processing done in lots of different places, and the web providing you with an interface to that experience. Right, okay, so kind of as a wrap-up exercise, you can see 3 icons here. What are they? What do they do? And what kind of programs would you call them? So I'll give you a minute. Again, we're going to do click the pause button. Good. Back in. So what are these bad boys doing? We've got the old classic Microsoft Word. Now, up until a little while ago, Microsoft Word was only installed as an application on your computer, so you'd call it a piece of software or a program. I just installed this new program called Word. It lets me write, messages to my friends and then print them out and put them in an envelope and post them through Royal Mail. Then, middling, well done if you got the icon. This is Safari. It's a web browser. This is definitely just a plain out application, because it would be kind of a weird having a web interface to a web browser. So the purpose of Safari is that you can look at the World Wide Web. That being said, though, you do get Safari as an app, don't you? It comes as a native app that's already installed on iOS, which is the Apple operating system on their phones. So you do get it as an app. but you also get it as an application. So it alternates between these two. And then finally, I think this is just the clock of Apple. And so this clock, I'm assuming there's no server behind it. I'm assuming that is just a clock, and so that is just a pure app. But going back to Word, while Word used to be just installed on your computer and then you just used it, now we've got Office 365, and Office 365 exists as a web application, and so you can access Word as well as having Word as an application on your computer. You can also access Word as a web service, as a web application, and so they've got a bit of a mixed economy there. Right, let's do some summation. This is what you need to know. Boom. Right, hardware. Hardware are the physical components that make up a computer system. That means the screen, the keyboard, the CPU or processor, as I called it in the video, are all pieces of hardware. Software is like a kind of brother and sister relationship. Software is the programs that run onto the hardware. So a computer game is a piece of software, and a piece of software is called a program. Somewhat cyclic definition there. Pieces of software do useful things. Okay, web applications. So a web application is a piece of software that doesn't run on an individual device, but actually runs on a specific device called a web server. And you can access a web application generally through a web browser, but often you have web applications can also interact with apps on individual devices. So Facebook and the school email are web applications. Application software. So there's two large groups of software. There's application software. These do tasks that are useful in the real world. So, for example, research is something that's useful to do in the real world, and we had ways of doing research prior to the internet, believe it or not. Whereas the general tool that we use to do research now would be a web browser. So, a web browser is an application. Whereas just below that, we've got system software. So system software are the bits of software that are required for the day-to-day running of the computer. So for example, the operating system, or Microsoft Windows as it's called, or an antivirus checker would be a piece of system software. And then finally, the largest piece of system software you got is the operating system. So like Windows or Android on a phone. This is basically a bit of software that runs all the other software. It's known as an operating system. I hope that's been useful, and look forward to further videos from you.